Well, let's see, years ago, and I think this was probably shortly after the time when I was sick myself when I was younger. I, my mom used to bring my brother and I up to visit the Boyums, and the cousins would get together, and actually I think this was before James was born. But I do remember Michael, him and I were always pretty competitive, and I know that in the neighborhood where they lived at the time, they always had problems with bullies in the neighborhood and with other kids. And I know he was, at least I heard stories, and I seem to remember one instance when he was taking me down to the playground, and some of these kids that had picked on him in the past, were there, and he's like, "Oh, you just better watch out, because my cousin Steve's here," and and it was sort of a situation that I was like, okay, if he's giving me some credit for being his older cousin, so he was proud to have an older cousin that would come and play with him and this and that. And I know during the years there were numerous times when they would come to our house for Christmas, and this was like when we were going through our teenage years, and his big thing was, oh, we got to get a Monopoly game going, or something. And he was just always so competitive. Thanksgiving, we used to go outside and play football when we'd get together. I wished sometimes in the past that we actually lived closer, because there were a number of years in that middle years that probably only saw each other once or twice a year. But I just remember him being so competitive with everything he did, And I was that way too, and I think that I tend to have gotten that from the fact that I went through what I went through when I was younger.
Why don't you tell us about that and how that kind of affected you and correlation with how it helped you with Michael's disease?
Well, back in the 70s, I was diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, and I was like first grade age, and I had a terrific supportive family who had my grandparents and from Marshfield that were just so supportive about the fact that you got to believe that, even at that young age, it was hard for me to believe to let God just, it was going to get settled by him. I mean, he was in control, and that's just believe that the Lord is looking out for you, and I know that was hard at that age to do, but I think that gave me a faith basis that I've had all my life, and I think it made me mentally mature rather quickly, having to deal with such a traumatic thing at that age, and it made me a stronger-willed person because of it. And I got through it. Probably I knew two other kids my same age at the same time that were in the same grade that didn't make it, and I've had to live with that and believe that I'm still here because of some reason, because that was the way God intended it to work out. I think that helped me to, although it hit me hard when Micah was diagnosed, just because I felt like after going through that as a kid, I don't know if I knew how I dealt with it then, because I was able to just sort of focus all when you're small and little and young, you don't have so many things going through your mind as far as people family relationships that have developed for so long. I think it's easier to maybe focus on that. That's why when Michael was diagnosed and I came over and visited him that one December, this was before he had the bone marrow transplant, part of my curiosity was I wanted to see how he was handling going through what he was going through just because of the similarity to what I went something similar in the chemos and this and that I'd gone through when I was a kid. And amazingly enough, I really didn't see him changed. He was still had his competitive nature, and he just, I was actually in shock because I really came to understand what kind of will he had for dealing with adverse situations, which I had known it was there, but I just didn't know to what level. And that became real apparent to me when I came up and saw him that one weekend. And I was like, yeah, he's if anybody can get through it, he could, you know. Because there's a lot of people whose willpower just collapses when they have to go through something traumatic. And I've always felt like, well, I'm here because of a reason. I always ask myself, well, why are you still here, you know? But obviously the Lord had a different plan for me and he must have needed Michael up there. I know Bonnie wanted me to say something about when I was going through what I went through, as a lot of young kids do, they have nightmares. I used to have nightmares and dreams that would, about getting over adverse situations. I know one, and I attribute that to the fact that I can't stand snakes. Because I used to have nightmares about having to get across the room filled with snakes on the floor. And now after all these years, I have to attribute that as an obstacle, along with probably portraying itself as, well, what I was dealing with at the time was an obstacle. And I always got through that room and made it to the other side. The other one that I had was, and this will relate back to Michael now, I used to have dreams that I was falling like from the sky, and I wouldn't wake up before I would hit the ground in the dream. I would actually hit the ground in the dream and stand up and brush myself off and say, gee, I'm all right. How'd that happen, you know? And when I first learned that Michael was diagnosed with his leukemia, I had a dream one night, and it brought back some memories of that falling dream that I used to have when I was younger, about the fact that it was, well, let's see if I can lay this out. It was like jumping. There was like a canyon, and with like cliff tops spread out throughout, and I was apparently on some type of like a motorcycle, and I was like leaping from cliff top to cliff top. And thinking about it, I was like, why did I have this dream? Other than the fact that after I got a couple leaps in and there's nothing down but just hundreds of feet down, all of a sudden I looked over and there was somebody else over there on another apparently motorcycle. I mean, I dream, you don't remember everything, and I looked over and I know for a fact that it was Michael on the other motorcycle. And I have to attribute all this to obstacles again, And so I was like, okay, let's go, And we both jumped like a couple of them. And then I jumped to the next one and I looked back and nothing. And I'm like, where did he go? And the only thing I could think to do would be to look down. And I looked down in the bottom of the canyon or whatever, and there was a crashed motorcycle and somebody laying down there. But I couldn't for some reason, I couldn't get down there right away. I had to make some more jumps and work my way down there. And when I finally did get down there to the bottom floor, where I thought that I had seen the person laying was gone. But as I looked off in the distance, or not in the, well, off that one direction, I noticed a big mouth to a cave. And I thought, well, maybe somebody came out. And right before the dream ended, the only thing I remember is seeing a bunch of littler, like what I would call children, I guess, all of a sudden appear in that mouth of the cave. And the only thing so then I felt like, okay, well, they've taken care of him, or some, and that's about when the dream ended. And it'd be all speculation to try to assume what that dream meant. People always try to interpret dreams. My best speculation would be that because of his karate and because of what he went through, there was a lot of children that were probably affected by him somehow, like he helped a lot of kids, and or what they learned from his illness and treating it maybe benefited people down the road now for years. Otherwise, I'm just guessing at what the whole thing meant. But that dream left a bad taste in my mouth that always in the back of my head, although I always had the faith that, well, it's going to work out the way the Lord wants it to. I always had that in the back of my head that, well, why did you have, that dream didn't sit well with me. It gave me a little bit of thought that, he was making progress over obstacles, but maybe wasn't going to quite get through the whole thing. I don't know. But when I had that dream, I was like, well, I got to keep up the faith and believe that it's going to work out the way God wants it to. But that dream I only had once, and unfortunately I couldn't have it again and continue it, so there you are with that.
Well, at what point did this happen? In Michael's, you found out he was sick at the point?
Yep, and I would say it was within inside of 2 weeks I had that dream. It was just after he got diagnosed. And I'd say it was probably easily inside of 2 weeks. And I had that dream, and I was like, it just left a bad feeling in my soul, so to speak, that, well, you always got to hope that the Lord's plans are what you sort of hope they are going to be, that he'll be cured, because technically I probably shouldn't be here, because the stuff they did in the 70s is nothing compared to what they can do now. Sure. And I was a guinea pig then. I'm one of the first original cancer survivors. So, and...
Keith, are you still there? Can you hear him okay? Okay, great. Yeah, that's interesting because, the perspective that you have on all this. So do you think that, did you share this dream with anybody?
Yeah.
At the time?
Yeah, I had talked to my brother, and then I had told my mom, and then of course, then we ended up telling Bonnie, and she's like, well, what is it? What did it mean? And I'm like, I don't know, I'm not an expert. I said, I didn't come out and tell her that. And I know my brother, when I told him that, he goes, yeah, I don't have a good feeling either, but he says, you got to hope the Lord's got it in his plans, that it'll work out, whatever is meant to be will be. And that's the way I've always looked at life. I think that's because of the way what I went through when I was younger. I think I've been able to deal with people passing on a little easier than some. And what really drags me down and tries to keep my faith going is the fact that I really don't like getting older and seeing more and more people that die of things. Although you just have to realize that they're gone from this place, but if in the big picture, you know, when everybody that has a great faith in God passes on, we'll be reunited. I mean, this is just a small, this life we experience here is just a small little bit of what will be. And it's, I don't know if my mom, I don't know if she got into this or not. She said she had some relative have a dream that Michael was, because my brother and sister-in-law lost a son, their first one. And I know she had said somebody well, maybe it was Bonnie. It might have been Bonnie knew somebody that said they had a dream about Michael and asked if he had a child, because they saw him with a child in this dream, and this was after he passed. And they thought, well, maybe it was Devin, my nephew that died, that maybe he, he's up there looking after him, So I don't know, funny things, it's all.
But you believe you had this dream for a reason, or maybe not?
I don't know why I had that dream. I don't know. I really don't. I mean, it when it started out, I was expecting just, well, why am I? Because I haven't had dreams like that for a long time. And then shortly, like I said, after I learned that Michael was diagnosed, I had that dream, and I'm like, well, I mean, I know that the dreams I had when I was younger had to have been just because of the great obstacles I was facing, and I would interpret them that way, as an obstacle. But I know I got hollered at in high school by one teacher who was doing, we were doing dream analysis or something, and he said, well, yeah, you know how in your dreams if you wake up before you hit the ground? And I'm like, no, because I always had them where I'd hit the ground, and so I don't know if other people have them. I'm sure other people do have the same type of dreams too, but.
Well, in your case, you had fallen off the cliff and survived because you beat.
Yeah.
Let's talk about, I know you've thought about this, which is you were sick and God, you lived.
Yeah.
For one reason or another.
Right.
And Michael didn't.
Right.
Tell me some more about what you think about all that, or what you think God's planning, what he's doing.
I guess I think about the fact that I have to always wonder why. I wish it was that easy to, and maybe now is not the time, because they always say that, I mean, the simplest thing could be a reason why God had a plan for this to happen and this not to happen. Growing up, I've always been giving to other people, helping them out, blah, blah, blah. I don't know why Michael, because I sort of felt like, the stuff that he was helping the kids with his karate, and he was he didn't have a single jealous bone in his body. I didn't see him change a whole lot. I mean, I just saw his will just keep going and keep going. And I thought actually, when I came to see him, that I thought at that time that everything seemed to be going pretty well. And I thought, well, maybe, good, keep going, just keep pushing. Because that's the only about, I don't remember a lot from what I went through. I remember certain little things, but my main thing was, you just got to keep your mind focused. I tell them, don't let other people distract you. This is something you're fighting. You got to do it for, you got to do it for yourself. You got to want to, you got to want to do it, You got to want to fight this.
Wasn't a problem for Michael, though.
No, he was fighting a tooth and nail. I mean, I was just totally amazed, because I'm actually glad that I went through it as a kid, because I think it would be harder for me to rechannel myself at this point. It would be harder for me than it was for Michael, I think. Just because I've learned and know so many people now that I think my mind would get distracted from what I needed to do. And I don't think he was getting distracted at all. Because that day that I came and visited him, he was making a point to go get flowers to take to the hospital to the nurses. He was out of the hospital the weekend I came to see him, and I rode along with him, and we went and got some flowers and took him up to his nurses in the hospital. And it was like, well, he definitely wasn't thinking of himself. So that's what was really amazing me, because as a kid, I sort of shelled myself in. But I had a great family surrounding me saying, the Lord's in charge, my grandparents, But as far as why me, I don't know. Because I felt like, I haven't really done anything special. That's mine.
Oh, that's your cell phone? So you just let it go? Okay. Well, and this brings up, you obviously believe that God has a plan and that things happen for a reason through God's...
Yes, I do. And I think that that's why it's easier for me to deal with things, because I realize that it's easier for me, and it always has been since I was a kid, to try to give a lot of my problems to the Lord and let Him handle them. Because He actually, I believe, He'd rather have you do that than burden yourself. That's why He's there. That's why, that's the whole point. I've heard Pastor Piper, I don't know, that's where the church that, and I've listened to a bunch of his sermon tapes, and, I really like him, the way he talks and what he teaches, and I have gotten even more strengthened by the words of him. I just think that it's easier for me to deal with things just because of what I went through. But I still wonder, well, okay, Michael had so much good things going for him, I could have not been around for 20 some odd years since, 79 is when I was totally cured, and let him do his thing. I figure since 79, I'm just living on borrowed time anyway. I figure, everybody's gonna make it to heaven sooner or later.
You said that God is the comforter that helps you get through these things. That's a little different than Him controlling our lives or having a plan for our lives. So how do you feel about do you think God actually planned for Michael to die and that was part of His plan, or do you think that He made, and we've been using this expression, made lemonade out of lemons? Like this sickness came on Michael, and then God used that. And then He was also the comforter for people through that.
Well, I think that everything bad that happens, that God doesn't make happen, I don't think. I think that what amazes me is the fact that before I was born, God knew that I'd be sitting in this chair today on this date, this many years after surviving my own cancer, and that is so amazing to me. I think that if you make the wrong choice in certain things you do in this world, He may allow something to happen. If it's not meant to happen, it won't. He won't. I don't think it'll happen. Anything that's not meant to happen, I don't believe will happen. I think that there's things that are allowed to happen for a reason that nobody knows, or at least not now. I've often thought, man, I wish I knew now what Michael knows. you know.
So, but I almost sense a part of you is like, God's got a plan for me, and even though you say it feels like borrowed time, I get the sense that you feel like that God has kept you around for a reason, and that there's a reason that you're trying to discover what that is. Or
Yeah, I think I'm still searching. I mean, but I don't know that I already haven't done what he wanted me to do, or why. I mean, it could be as simple as that a couple years ago in the winter when I had to help a old lady across the icy parking lot, you know. I mean, she wouldn't have made it if I wasn't there, because she was laying there, and I came out of the library, and there she was, and I had to help her walk across the lot to this senior center in the middle of town. It was for, I don't know if she was homeless or not, but it didn't matter. I was like, yeah, I'll help you. You know, I got her to the place to eat, or wherever they're feeding them, you know, or meals or whatever, and I didn't think anything of it. But how do I know that that wasn't why? I mean, you don't, you know. It would be nice if I knew why, but then again, maybe I don't need to know, and that's why I don't know. And it better you don't know some things, I guess.
So you're saying that, and this is a lesson perhaps for everyone, is that it's just to trust God that He.
Yeah, I think so. You just gotta, every day you just gotta trust that whatever you're supposed to do that day, you'll hopefully, if you trust Him enough, He'll guide you through that day, and you'll, you know, do something to try to do better, you know, to better yourself or better somebody else's life by doing something for them that day. I mean, the older I get, the worse I really think that it really stinks the way the people, because I go back to the way the Bible, you know, and been working my way through it because I want to read the whole thing, and it just mind boggles me how superior God really is to everybody on this earth. I mean, we can't help but, because we're human, to sin. I mean, you couldn't not probably do something wrong every single day. I mean, just something you think, or some way you look at somebody even, you know. I mean, God is that perfect, that He just has so much love for us, and that's why it really, I think, pains Him a lot to see the way people act in this world.
But pertaining to death and things that maybe we don't understand,
Yeah.
illnesses.
Sure.
Can you just tell me, just to sum it up,
Okay.
for camera,
Sure.
how you feel about how God is in control even when it doesn't seem like He is? Or that we just need to trust Him? Because like you were saying, that maybe it was for a time that you needed to help somebody who crossed the street.
Sure.
Because they might have been hit by a car, or
Right.
would have
Right.
died of exposure or something like that.
Well, I think when people die, which is a fact that everybody has to deal with at some point in their life, when people die in a freak accident or get sick and die, I think people wonder, well, they don't quite get it. It's like, why did this have to happen? Well, I don't, and then they start to blame God for that. There's been people that have said, well, why did God let this happen? And it's like, you know, you should try to give yourself to God every day, and not go all of a sudden asking Him when you got somebody that's sick. Well, now people go in, when they're in a crisis situation, they'll tend to pray to God more than when they aren't. When their lives are going good, they're not as apt to be close to the Lord, because it always seems like God is more called upon in times of crisis than prayed to on a daily basis, and and just try to give your daily life to them. I just think that that's because there's a lot of people that are not up to speed. I mean, there are a lot of people out there that probably just don't have the faith for whatever reason. And I wish it would be nice to get them to change, but I don't really know how you would.
I'm gonna have to switch tapes here, so hang on just a second.
I don't know if the age that I'm in the playground thing, if he was old enough to really realize what I had gone through. Because I'm talking, I was maybe 10, so he would have, well, maybe 11. I'd say he was no older than 6 or 7 or 8 when that all happened. So I don't know if he had a concept of, maybe because Bonnie told him, well, your cousin's coming who beat this, I don't know.
Okay. We're just trying to see if there was a way, if there was a time when Michael looked up to you and then throughout his life. And then
I know that when he was sick and I came to visit him, he asked me how I felt when I was going through what I went through as a kid. And I said basically that I really didn't know what was happening, but I was able to try to focus everything I had on every time I'd go in for treatment. I would just grin and bear it, so to speak, and eat it up and just say, yeah, bring it, give me everything you got, because it ain't gonna knock me out. It ain't gonna, it's not gonna knock me down. And I just tried to, because he did ask me what, and I said, I wish now, because of your case, I wish I remembered more about how I exactly felt. The only thing that sticks in my head is I know that I didn't have a problem sort of ignoring people a little bit, especially when I was sick. I was like, okay, yeah, I know you're here, and I know you're here because I'm sick, but don't worry about it. I'm taking care of it. I'm fighting it, by myself. Being that little, that young, you just don't know the things you know when you get older. You don't have all the emotions. You haven't really learned what life is about when you're young. When you get older, you learn what life is. You tend to appreciate the time that you have here, regardless of your faith, just because it's important to you. And I think that God doesn't have a problem with that, because He wants us to be happy, but He also wants us to do the things we should, not, sort of stray off the line and take the wrong road or whatever.
Do you think Michael's illness, or even your illness, kind of helped you focus in on those things that God wants you to do with your life, or even Michael?
I think the older I get, yeah. Because the older I get, I believe it does, because it makes me think a little bit more every day when I wake up. Makes me think, well, okay, what can I do today to achieve, or to hopefully seek the possible reason that I may not know why I'm still around. I may not know it for 20 years yet, but you got to keep your open mind and say, well, I'm going to be ready for any signs that may come my way that could lead me a different direction in my life, maybe career, whatever. Because you just don't really know. Sometimes I wish I knew. But then I think maybe God doesn't want you to, because they say God will test people. He'll test them, but He'll never test them to the point where they can't handle it.
Yeah, that's right. Do you, But don't you feel that's a kind of a universal thing, that not even people who haven't been through an illness like you have should have that same trust, but you've just come to understand a little better, perhaps?
Well, people in general, I wish more people had that trust. But unfortunately, the way this world is, I don't really know. I wish I can do what I can do without pushing religion on people. But something at some point, I think, has to sort of make people change, and something dramatic. Whether it's somebody they are close to dies or they lose a loved one, well, maybe after that happens, they turn around their lives and believe or get the faith. Or, I mean, there's so many people that blame God for things when they go wrong, which to me I don't, because I figure in some way it was allowed to happen this way, and it'll all work out in the end the way it's supposed to. And there's been so many things that, well, I don't know if there's so many things, but
that's your point is simply trust.
You have to. And it's hard at times, sure. We're human. I mean, it's so easy not to a lot of the time that when I don't, it drives me nuts. When I going through something, like I always get freaked out every year when I go in for a physical, because I'm like, oh, I think they'll find something wrong. Well, but I think that I'm that way because when I take my health real serious. I won't take any chances about something that I know doesn't feel right. I will go in. There's a lot of people, but I tend to be more on the aggressive side that way. But I think that stems from when I was sick.
But as far as, no matter what you stress out or da-da-da-da-da, what matters really ultimately is that you just trust. And I would like you to say that for the camera.
Okay, yeah. I think that no matter what problems anybody has, there's always a solution to any problem. And I think the focal point should be that ultimately they should have trust in the Lord that things will work out the way they're meant to. It's hard for somebody to say that believes it like I do, and say it and make it stick to somebody that doesn't believe, but
that's really not your job.
No.
Really. You don't need to worry about that.
No.
Just say what you feel. It's just, and just say it again. Don't worry about that. Just how you feel personally about, no matter what comes up, that you have this trust. Just say from your own. Don't worry about what other people are trying to convince people. Just what you feel inside. Just tell us how you feel.
All right.
What you believe.
All right. I believe that God is in control of every situation that you go through. I believe that ultimately you have to trust that things will work out for a reason. The ultimate plan that none of us know. The simplest thing. It's all been written long before any of us were alive. So you just have to trust that no matter what you're dealing with, if you can give that problem to the Lord, it will take so much burden off of you. If you can really deeply give it to Him, your burden will feel so much less than what you're feeling right now. You just have to trust.
And now let's move into off of that dream. I know we've been talking a while.
Yeah,
but
that's all right.
We're talking about some interesting stuff here. Let me go have a drink. Your dream was almost a premonition to you. You didn't quite understand it, but then Michael died. And how did you feel? And how did that test you, or how did that affect you? And just tell us about that.
Well, after things went bad the other way, after Michael had his bone marrow transplant, I did think back to that dream and think, well, maybe that was a premonition to what may ultimately happen. I still questioned, well, why, I mean, we always ask, why does this happen? It made me sort of feel like, if he could keep me around when I was younger, why, when Michael did so much good for so many kids with his karate, and he was so, I think he just did things just because he wanted to, I mean, I do too, but not, he was involved in more personal things than I was. I mean, I just have, a regular blue-collar job.
Yeah, but that's okay. I mean, this is not about, really about comparing this and that. And it sounds to me like you almost, there's a part of you focus on that a lot in your life, it sounds like. And I think yet you understand that you don't have to, because God could have used you 2 years ago.
Yeah.
So it's funny that you keep bringing it up, because I feel like you've got peace about it, and then there's a part of me that feels like you don't have peace about it.
I think I'm sort of torn.
Yeah.
A little bit.
Okay.
Because it's just, because the thing is it's been drilled in my head since I was younger. Well, you're here for a reason. You're here for, so, that's what all my relatives always said. Well, you're here for a reason, and I always believed it, but yet it was like, yeah, but why? So I ask, well, why?
And I think as you've gotten older, you've gotten to the point where you don't need to.
I don't need to, yeah.
Okay. But let's focus on your emotions of the day you found out Michael died. Was that a shock to you? Did you expect for him to recover, since you did recover yourself? And you've been saying you saw him have all kinds of potential things that he could do, helping the kids and stuff. So how did that feel?
It wasn't I was able to basically deal with it in the sense that it sort of hit home a little bit because of the other two kids that went through what I went through, and they weren't here, and all of a sudden now I know somebody else that had something similar, and it was a cousin, not just a friend of mine or a friend's mom or dad or whatever. It hit a little closer to home. I mean,
but you sound like you've gone through this with other people, so it wasn't a complete shock.
It wasn't. No, it was not a complete, total shock. Because of that dream, whether it was a premonition or not, I sort of got a bad feeling about it in the beginning already, but yet I wouldn't have let on to anybody that I thought that. I just told them about the dream and said, well, I don't know what it meant, Maybe there's, I just didn't, it was a bad feeling in my mind, but I'm not one for interpreting dreams, so how can I tell whether or not it really was or not? It was just something that was stuck in my craw. That's why when it finally went for the worst, it hit home, but it wasn't a total shock. But yet I always had the question, well, why? I think you always ask that.
Everybody, I get the feeling most people felt that he was going to recover. Nobody had any doubt. So did you sense that everybody had really strong hope that Michael?
Oh, everybody, yeah. I mean, from this family, yes. I mean, they always did. And, I mean, Bonnie, my aunt always said, well, you made it, he'll make it, and she was, like, putting pressure on me because I'm here, and I'm like, well, I don't have any control over it. I don't have any control over what happens. I said, the Lord will. I said, it's going to work out the way it's meant to, whether we like it or not. It's going to ultimately work out the way it's meant to. Nothing bad. The Lord doesn't create bad things. He allows them to occur.
Why?
Because of reasons we do not know. I'm sure Michael knows why now. Maybe not. I don't know. I would like to think that he does. I would like to think that he knows why I may still be here, or if I already did what I was supposed to do. But I don't dwell on it as much as I used to. I'll tell you what, I used to be really messed up.
That's not good. That's not
Because they drilled that into me so much. Yeah.
terrible. But I guess just to go into, because we really haven't explored how, you said it wasn't a shock to you, but I'm sure you felt some sadness.
Yes. Oh, yes.
So-
Sure I did. Because I felt like, oh, that's horrible because of the fact that the relationship he had with Michelle and their wedding. He amazed me again that night at their wedding by his strength that he had to even be there and go through with it. I was just totally flabbergasted at that he was able to have strength to actually hang out all night at and actually the ceremony and the reception, and it was amazing to me. Yeah, right up until the last, he never ever gave up. I know that, and I think everybody else did too, and the whole family. I mean, I never wish anything bad to happen to anybody I know.
Yeah.
You know.
Were you inspired by how he dealt with this?
I think what it helped me to do is to realize that I don't have to dwell so much on why I'm here yet. I think it took a little burden off of me because I was really questioning why I'm here yet when he was going through what he went through, because it really was hitting me hard just because, I mean, not hard to the point where I couldn't, but just inside it was like, I just don't like to see people go through that. I always felt like I went through enough for everybody. I don't want to see any family members deal with that.
But now looking, you feel like, so that was the lesson that you've learned from, or maybe what Michael...
No, I think I just learned that it just sort of rejuvenated seeing him deal with what he was dealing with, and up until the very end, I think it rejuvenated my strength a little bit because I may have swayed a little bit off from what I actually always felt about, but I think it just showed me and helped me to sort of actually give that part of what was always bugging me all them years about why am I still here. I sort of tried easier to give it back to God and say, well, I ain't gonna worry about it. You it'll happen, whatever it is.
Okay. Anything else you'd like to add?
I do miss a lot of the competitive stuff. It was always fun messing around with games, football, games, Risk. Boy, he was a master at those. And I miss him. I wish he was still here because I just felt so bad for Michelle and the whole family. And for myself, because I lost somebody that I had a lot of respect for with the things he was doing in that community. I just never wanted to see that happen because he was so genuine and he had a lot of spirit, that's for sure. He just was never a quitter.